Revenge office stories. For years, my supervisor didn't just mock me. She actively sabotaged my work and seemed hell-bent on breaking my spirit. It was like she had made it her personal mission to make me feel invisible, incompetent, and completely worthless. She probably thought she'd won when I finally quit. What she had no idea about was that my resignation was just the first step in a plan I'd been carefully putting together to tear her career apart. She saw me walking away as her victory, the final nail in my coffin. She could not have been more wrong. This is the story of how I went from being her favorite target to the person who engineered her professional doom. It feels like a different lifetime, but I remember who I was before she showed up. I was 28 when I joined Sterling Cross Marketing, a busy, creative firm that was actually a great place to work. I came in as a junior project coordinator, but I was ambitious and I was dedicated. I just loved the energy of the place, how everyone worked together. It felt like we were all building something that mattered. I poured everything I had into my work, not just to climb the ladder, but because I really believed in what we were doing. And it worked. By the time I hit 33, I was a senior project manager, one of the most trusted people in the company. My boss for most of that time was a guy named Mr. Henderson. He was old school, but in the best way. He believed in trusting his team and letting them run with things. He saw something in me from day one, always giving me tough projects, but also the freedom to actually do them. "You've got good instincts, Sarah," he'd always say, "trust them." And under him, I thrived. I was the one who landed the huge Innovatech account after 6 months of nonstop pitching. I was the one who designed a new workflow system that cut our project times by 15%, a system the whole company ended up using. I even mentored the junior staff, taking the time to explain the little things no one ever explained to me, just trying to pay forward the kindness Mr. Henderson had shown me. My coworkers weren't just colleagues, they were my friends. We'd grab lunch and brainstorm. We'd celebrate our wins, and we'd pull each other through the stressful times. My work was a huge part of my identity. I was proud of it. I was respected. I felt seen. I had a real future there, a clear path I had built for myself, one success at a time. Looking back, those were the golden years. I was just naive enough to think it would last forever. I had no clue that the entire foundation of my professional life was about to get rocked by one woman, a woman who would look at my competence and see a threat. It all kicked off when Mr. Henderson announced he was retiring. We threw him this massive party, and honestly, we were all sad to see him go. But underneath that, there was this nervous buzz about who was going to take his place. The company decided to hire from the outside, wanting to bring in fresh blood, or whatever. That fresh blood was Brenda. On her first day, she strolled in with this air of authority she hadn't earned yet. She was probably in her late 40s, always dressed to the nines, with a smile that just never, ever reached her eyes. Her resume was stacked, full of impressive titles at big companies. At first, I was optimistic. I thought, hey, I could learn from her. I went up, introduced myself, told her what I did, and offered to help her get settled in. "Good to know," she said, barely giving me a glance before her eyes locked on the corner office that used to be Mr. Henderson's. That was the first little twinge of something's not right here. The red flags started popping up almost immediately. They were small at first, like little static shocks. In her first team meeting, I was giving an update on the Innovatech account, talking about a new campaign we were about to launch. Brenda just nodded. A few minutes later, the head of our division walked in, and she announced, "I've already identified a new strategic direction for Innovatech that I believe will drive significant growth." She then repeated my update almost word for word, but passed it off as her own idea. I was just stunned. My colleagues kind of shot me these sympathetic looks. But who's going to correct the new boss on day one? I just told myself it was a misunderstanding. She was probably nervous, trying to look like she was in charge. A week later, I sent her a detailed project proposal I'd spent 2 weeks getting just right. Her only feedback was a one-line email. "This needs to be more dynamic." That's it. No specifics, no actual criticism. Just more dynamic. When I tried to book a meeting to ask what the hell that meant, she just declined the invite with a note that said she'd circle back. She never did. It didn't take long to see that Brenda's management style was a nasty mix of micromanagement and pure arrogance. She had this desperate need to be the smartest person in any room, and she couldn't handle the idea that someone on her team, especially someone younger, might actually be good at their job. My years of experience and my track record meant nothing. To her, my success under Mr. Henderson wasn't an asset, it was a threat. It was proof that a world existed before she got there, and she was dead set on tearing it down and rebuilding it in her own image, with her right at the center. The friendly, collaborative vibe our team used to have just started to evaporate. It was replaced by fear, and I was about to become her main target. The first few months with Brenda bled into a full year of slow-motion psychological warfare. Her attacks just became part of my daily routine. This constant, grinding pressure that was starting to wear me out. It was a war on two fronts, humiliating me in public and sabotaging me in private. The public mockery was her go-to move. In team meetings, she didn't just ignore my ideas anymore. She'd actively shoot them down. I'd present a strategy backed up with data, and she'd cut me off with a loud sigh. "That's an interesting take, Sarah," she'd say, letting interesting hang in the air like a bad smell. "But let's hear from someone with a bit more C-suite exposure. Mark, what do you think?" Then she'd turn to a more junior guy, who would often just rephrase what I'd just said, and she'd praise him like he'd just discovered fire. The goal was obvious: make me look like an out-of-touch amateur in front of the same people I used to mentor. She loved to mock my work ethic. I've always been the type to stay late and make sure every detail is perfect. Mr. Henderson saw that as a strength. Brenda saw it as a weapon. She'd make a big show of packing up at 5:01 p.m., and on her way out, she'd call across the office, "Still here, Sarah? Don't you have a home to go to?" Remember, it's about working smart, not just working long. The hypocrisy was insane, because half the time I was staying late to fix her disorganized messes or wait for her contradictory, last-minute feedback. This is what workplace bullying does to you. It's designed to get inside your head and just shred your confidence. I started dreading meetings. I'd rehearse simple updates over and over, trying to find the magic words that wouldn't set her off, but it was useless. I started to second-guess myself, my own skills I had been so confident in for years. My stomach was in knots every morning driving to work. I wasn't tired from the work. I was exhausted from having to put on emotional armor every single day. Then came the sabotage, which was way worse. It's how a boss like her gets to cripple your performance without leaving obvious fingerprints. And Brenda was a pro. For one major client presentation, she forgot to forward me the final brief, which had critical changes. I only found out by pure luck when I ran into someone from accounts the day before. I had to pull an all-nighter, frantically redoing the entire strategy. In the meeting, Brenda had the nerve to say, "It's a good thing I have an eye for detail and caught those client changes. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been ready." She started losing my work. I'd email her a critical file, and a week later, with the deadline breathing down our necks, she'd claim she never got it. "Are you sure you sent it, Sarah? I've checked everywhere." I learned fast. I started using read receipts and CCing a trusted colleague on everything, creating a paper trail she couldn't deny. But she'd just find other ways to block me. She'd sit on approvals for weeks, creating bottlenecks that I would get blamed for. She'd change the entire scope of a project at the last second, then act disappointed when I couldn't magically meet the original deadline. It was all a calculated game to make me look incompetent. After 6 months of this, I knew I had to do something. So I tried to play by the rules. I asked for a one-on-one with her. I kept it professional, framing it as a communication issue. I said something like, I'd love to find a better way for us to collaborate so I can make sure I'm meeting your expectations." Her response was a masterclass in gaslighting. She leaned back, that condescending smile plastered on her face, and said, "Sarah, I think you might be a little too sensitive. This is a high-pressure environment. I'm direct because I'm focused on results. Perhaps you need to develop a thicker skin." She twisted my legitimate concerns into a personal weakness. My next stop was HR. I dreaded it, but what choice did I have? I sat down with an HR rep and calmly laid it all out, giving specific examples of the mockery, the sabotage, everything. The response was crushing. The rep listened, then explained that legally, workplace bullying is a really gray area. She told me it's generally not illegal unless it's tied to discrimination based on things like race, gender, or religion. She asked, "Has Brenda said anything about your gender? Your age?" I said no. Her attacks were all about my competence. She gave me this helpless, sympathetic look and said, "In that case, it doesn't technically meet the legal definition of harassment. My official advice is to try and work it out with Brenda." I walked out of that HR office feeling completely and utterly alone. The one department that's supposed to protect you just told you that you're on your own. The system wasn't going to help. I was trapped. The stress and anxiety got so much worse. I couldn't sleep, just lying awake replaying her insults or worrying about what trap she'd set next. The job I used to love was now a daily source of misery. It was around then that I started a new file on my laptop, a simple text doc I named The Record. I started documenting everything, every comment, every missed deadline on her end, every email she lost. I saved everything, took screenshots and noted dates, times, and witnesses. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I just knew I needed proof I wasn't going crazy. It was my one small act of defiance, and that little document would eventually become the weapon that brought her whole world crashing down. If you're already getting angry on my behalf and you want to see how this all blows up, take a second to like this video and subscribe. It really means a lot. And trust me, you're going to want to see the end of this. The breaking point finally came a little over 2 years into Brenda's reign of terror. It all centered on the Phoenix account, a massive, career-defining project for a huge new client. I had led the pitch, and winning it felt amazing, like a brief flash of the good old days. The project was a year-long campaign, and I was the lead. It was my baby. I had planned every single phase, and despite Brenda's constant meddling, the project was on track to be a huge success. We were in the final week, getting ready for the big presentation to the client's board, where we'd unveil a year's worth of work. This presentation was everything. It was a huge chunk of our division's revenue and my one big chance to prove what I could do on a scale no one could deny. I spent 2 solid weeks pulling together a year's worth of data, designs, and reports into one giant presentation file. It was a monster, over a gigabyte of videos, mock-ups, and data. It was my masterpiece. The day before the meeting, I sent the final, locked version to Brenda for her final review, just like the rules said. I saved it on the shared server and emailed her a direct link, CCing myself out of habit. The next morning, I got to the office early to run through it one last time. I opened the folder. The file was there. I double-clicked. An error message popped up. File is corrupted and cannot be opened. A wave of cold dread just washed over me. I tried again. Same message. I checked the file size. 2 kilobytes. The content was gone. A year of my work. Vanished. I literally felt the blood drain from my face. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely type as I tried to find the backup I'd emailed myself. Just then, Brenda walked over, a look of fake concern plastered on her face. "Morning, Sarah. Ready for the big show." "Brenda," I said, my voice trembling, "the presentation file, it's gone. It's corrupted." She did this theatrical gasp. "What? That's impossible. I was in the file late last night, just making a few tiny tweaks to the title slide. It must be a server glitch." Oh, this is a disaster. And right there, looking at her terrible acting, I knew. There was no glitch. Her minor tweaks were her final, most brazen act of sabotage. She had deliberately waited until the last possible second to destroy my work, making sure there was no time to fix it. The next hour was just pure panic. The file was gone. IT confirmed it had been overwritten with a blank document at 11:47 p.m. the night before from Brenda's computer. She just claimed she must have saved it wrong. The client's board was already in the main conference room. We had nothing. Brenda insisted we go in anyway. She stood up in front of the furious clients and delivered an Oscar-worthy performance, explaining that because of my poor file management and failure to follow backup protocols, the presentation was lost. She made it sound like I had single-handedly fumbled the entire project on the 1-yard line. I just stood there next to her in total silence as the clients stared at me with pure disgust. My own bosses looked at me with disappointment. I was being publicly executed, and my executioner was pretending to be a concerned bystander. But as I stood there, taking it all in, something inside me just snapped. The fear I'd been living with for 2 years? Gone. The anxiety? Gone. All that was left was this cold, hard clarity. This was it. In that moment of complete professional humiliation, I felt this strange, liberating calm. She had taken everything, and in doing so, she'd set me free. My loyalty to the company, a company that let this happen, was gone. I looked at Brenda, who was now profusely apologizing to the client for me, and I didn't feel rage. I felt nothing but a quiet, steely resolve. The decision was made. I was going to quit, but I wasn't just walking away. This wasn't surrender. It was the first move in a game she didn't even know we were playing. The next morning, I walked into Brenda's office and put my 2 weeks' notice on her desk. She picked it up, and this slow, triumphant smirk spread across her face. This was exactly what she wanted. She'd won. "I understand," she said, her voice practically dripping with fake sympathy. "After yesterday's unfortunate incident, a fresh start is probably for the best. I wish you well." She thought she was watching me retreat in defeat. In reality, she was watching the beginning of her own end. I didn't spend my last 2 weeks frantically trying to hand over my projects. Brenda, in her arrogance, just assumed I would. She even assigned me the task of creating a huge handover document for her. I just smiled politely and agreed. But my plan was already in motion. I wasn't there for a smooth transition. I was there to gather my ammunition. My plan had 3 steps. First, the dossier. For 2 years, I had kept the record, my private log of her abuse. Now, it was time to turn it into a weapon. I spent every spare minute of those 2 weeks compiling it. I organized every email where she'd claimed not to receive files. I took screenshots of every condescending chat. I cross-referenced my journal with my calendar and project timelines to create a detailed chronology of her sabotage. For the Innovatech brief, she forgot. I attached the email from my colleague and the timestamps of my overnight work, proving I'd had to save the project from her mistake. For the final presentation disaster, I included the IT report showing her login had corrupted the file. This wasn't just an angry diary. It was a 40-page evidence-based report complete with a table of contents. It was a cold, factual indictment of her incompetence and malice, all written in boring corporate language. It spelled out exactly how her actions led to project delays, wasted money, and angry clients. Step 2 was malicious compliance. I just stopped being her safety net. For 2 years, she had relied on me to anticipate her needs, clean up her messes, and do the parts of her job she was too lazy to do. For my last 10 days, I did my job. Exactly my job and nothing more. A junior colleague asks me a question. That's a management-level decision. You'll need to ask Brenda. Then I'd email them, CCing Brenda. As discussed, please direct this to Brenda for approval. Vendor invoices came to me. I forwarded them directly to her, CCing her boss and the entire accounts department with a note, forwarding for managerial approval as per protocol. My inbox went from a problem-solving hub to a relentless forwarding machine. I was creating a real-time, undeniable paper trail of just how much work she was supposed to be doing and just how incapable she was of handling it. Within a week, she was completely swamped, missing deadlines, and firing off panicked, incoherent emails. For the first time, everyone could see her incompetence, not just me. Step 3 was the final move. My last day. My exit interview with HR was a joke. I was polite, vague, just said I was looking for new opportunities. The same rep who told me I was on my own just nodded along, clueless. After that, I went back to my desk one last time. I took a deep breath and opened a new email. In the to line, I put the CEO, the entire C-suite, the head of my division, and the head of HR. I attached 2 files. The first was a zip file of every project document on my computer, my official handover. The second file was the dossier. The subject line was simple: project files and final report on departmental inefficiencies. The email itself was short and sharp. As part of my offboarding, I have handed over all project files. I have also compiled a report detailing systemic issues and workflow inefficiencies under Brenda's leadership, which I believe contributed to project delays and recent client dissatisfaction. I hope this provides valuable insight. I wish the company all the best. I hit send. Then I packed my little box of things, walked out the door, and didn't look back. I didn't get to see the explosion myself, but the shockwaves reached me pretty quick. A few of my old colleagues, the ones who'd been silent allies, kept me in the loop with a series of gleeful, whispered phone calls. My email apparently landed like a bomb in the executive wing. The CEO, a guy who lived for data and efficiency, reportedly read all 40 pages of my dossier that night. The report, filled with undeniable, time-stamped proof, was bad enough. But when they combined it with the chaos from my last 2 weeks, the paper trail proving Brenda was a catastrophic bottleneck. It was an open and shut case. A high-level investigation was launched immediately. They brought in an external auditor to interview everyone on my old team. With Brenda out of the picture and the investigation protecting them, my old teammates finally started talking. One by one, they backed up my story. They shared their own stories of her stealing credit, giving confusing orders, and creating a toxic environment. The whole facade of the competent, powerful executive she had built for herself crumbled in less than 48 hours. And without me there to clean up her messes, it all fell apart. A major project missed its deadline just 3 days after I left. A client complained directly to the CEO about her rude and dismissive attitude. She was completely exposed, a queen with no one left to do her work for her. 1 week after I left, 2 weeks after she smirked at my resignation, Brenda was called into a meeting with the CEO and HR. She was fired, effective immediately. No soft landing, no generous package. She was escorted out of the building by security, carrying her stuff in a cardboard box. Her nameplate was gone from Mr. Henderson's old office before the end of the day. Her reputation in our tight-knit little industry was destroyed. She hadn't just lost a job. Her career was over. I took a full month off after I quit. I just needed to decompress, to sleep, to disconnect from the anxious, defensive person I'd had to become. It felt like coming up for air after being held underwater for way too long. When I was ready, I started job hunting. Turns out, Brenda hadn't destroyed my reputation. She had just suppressed it. I had multiple offers within a few weeks. I took a job as a director of project management at a direct competitor, a place famous for its great work culture. The pay was better, the job was bigger, and people treated me with a level of respect I had almost forgotten existed. And in a final, perfect twist, the Innovatech account, the one from that disastrous presentation, found me. The head client, having heard through the grapevine what really went down, called me personally. He apologized for how he'd judged me that day and said my leadership was what they'd valued all along. 6 months later, They dropped my old firm and moved their multi-million-dollar account to my new one. I was leading their projects again, only this time I was supported, valued, and winning. It wasn't really about revenge in the end. It was about justice. It was about taking back my career, my sanity, and my self-worth. And it was about making sure someone like Brenda couldn't do this to anyone else. I didn't destroy her career. She did. I just wrote it all down. So that's my story. It was a dark, hard chapter of my life, but I came out of it stronger and smarter. I got a satisfying ending, but I know for a lot of people in this situation, that's not how it goes. If there's one thing I learned, it's this: document everything. Know what you're worth. And know that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away, but on your own terms. I know so many of you have had to deal with being undervalued, sabotaged, or bullied at work. Please share your own stories in the comments. Let's build a place where we can support each other. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice being served.